Welcome back. We just finished implementing the behavior that allows us to change the weapon's Z location while interping. So if we hit the E key while tracing this item, we'll see that we're altering the item's Z location. It's flying up to about the elevation of the camera interp location and then falling back down, and then we get our weapon swapped. Now, we're not altering the X or the Y coordinates of the item, so we're going to go ahead and take care of the X and Y coordinates in this video. So here we are in item.h, and we're going to go ahead and declare a couple of variables for the X and Y coordinates that we're going to interpolate. So here in the private section, we're going to create a float called item interp X, and we're going to create a float called item interp Y. Now I'll give these both comments, and we're going to say X and Y for the item while interping in the equip interping state. Now let's go ahead and give these default values in the constructor. So way up at the top here in the item interp variables, we're going to have item interp X. We'll initialize this float with a value of 0.f, and item interp Y. We'll give this also an initial value of 0.f. Now we're going to do the interpolation in our function we created down here called item interp. This is called every frame. Now we're going to perform our interpolation here. So down at the bottom, just before we set the actor location, we're going to do our X and Y interpolation. So let's create some const float local variables. I'm going to create one called interp X value, and I'm going to set this equal to the result from an interpolation that we'll do. And in order to interpolate, we need the current location of our item. So we also need a f vector. It's going to be a const f vector. We're going to call this current location, and we can initialize this to what's returned by get actor location. This will be the current location this frame. Now we're going to interpolate using fmath. So interp x value is going to be the result returned by f interp2. This is the interpolation function for floats. Now finterp2 takes a current float value, and we're going to use this current location by getting the x component of it. So current location, this is the current x of our item. And then we need a target. Now our target is going to be the camera interp location, which we got up here. And we know that it hasn't changed in any of the subsequent lines thanks to the const keyword. We know that we don't have to look at any of the subsequent lines to see if we've changed this. We know that it is exactly the camera interp location this frame unaltered. So we can say camera interp location, and we're getting the x coordinate of that vector. The next argument is going to be delta time. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these arguments each on their own line. So next is delta time. And finally, we want interp speed. Now we can tweak this. We can even make it a parameter that we can change from within blueprints, but I'm going to go ahead and hard code a value of 30.0f. I find that this works for me, but go ahead and experiment with it if you're not happy with this interpolation speed. I'm going to use that. So that is our interp x value. We're also going to interp the y value. So let's make a const float called interp y value. And we're going to go ahead and set this equal to fmath finterp2. And we're simply going to use current location.y as the current float value. We're going to do the camera interp location.y for the target float value. Next, we need our delta time. We'll pass that in. And our interp speed, which we're going to use 30.0f, just like with the x. So we can go ahead and give these comments and say interpolated x value, and for this one, interpolated y value. And now down here, we're adding to the item location Z, but we're not going to add to the X and Y. We're actually going to set X and Y equal to these interpolated values. That's because finterp2 takes the current value and the target value and gives us a value somewhere in between based on our interp speed. So it's already where we need it to be for the X and Y. So we're going to say set X and Y of item location to interpt values. So let's say item location.x equals interp value, interp x value. And item location.y equals interp y value. So that is going to set the x and y to the interpt value. And so we should see the item fly up to the x and y coordinates of the camera's interp location. So now we're interpolating for the x and y, and we're setting the z according to the curve value. Let's go ahead and compile this and see how it works. Okay, so we're back here in the editor. I'm going to hit play, and I'll go ahead and hit E with this item being traced. And now we see that the item is flying right up to the location here in front of the camera. Perfect. Let's go ahead and open a new viewport so we can see this in full screen. So I'm going to hit Alt P to play, and we'll pick this up, and there it is. Now, if you aren't happy with that interp location in front of the camera, you can alter it. We have made those parameters that we can change in the character class. Remember, if we go to character and shooter character BP, then in the details panel, if we search for interp, you'll see that we have camera interp distance and camera interp elevation. If we change camera interp elevation from 65 to say 75, then the weapon is going to interp a little bit higher once we pick it up. See, it's a little bit higher on the screen there. So that might be a little bit too high. I'm going to leave that at 65. Now 250 might be a little too far away from the camera. If you want, you can make this a lower number, like say 150. Now you'll see it's a little bit too close. I would say if you wanted it this close, then you'd go ahead and probably make the interp elevation a little lower, say something like 55. So let's see how that looks. So yeah, something like that. That looks pretty good. I mean, it's a little bit closer than I intended. I would maybe prefer it be a little farther away, but it doesn't look too bad actually. So yeah, maybe we can keep that value. So play with those values. If you want, you can change them. And that is going to conclude this video. Now, notice one thing, and this is what we're going to work on in the next video. If I start the interpolation process and I start to turn rapidly, you'll see that the weapon is turning in the air. Do you see that? If I start the interpolation and I turn rapidly, the weapon starts turning. And you can really see this if I turn really rapidly like this. So we're going to take care of that in the next video by keeping that rotation constant so that we don't get that spinning effect when our character is rotating. So see you in the next video.